My name is Zach, and you might recognize me from other toy art videos such as Storm Shadow, the toy we all thought never would come in, and Where Have You Been for 3 months? We're going to get into that at some point soon in another video. But I really wanted to start talking off about my favorite thing in the world today, and going a little bit of a different journey here with y'all, and that is to talk G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe has been my favorite since before I could remember, right? And I really wanted to start talking about 5 things that really stand out to me about G.I. Joe right now, between 2 different specific ones, because I was like, I've made plenty of classified videos, and that's really where I've stuck, right? But when I got really excited last year was for Super7 announcing Ultimates, which might still not be here at this point yet, maybe, possibly. But the ReAction figures really popped for me, and when Hasbro announced the return of the O-ring figure. Oh yeah, this is Duke right here. And I want to talk about 5 different things that really stand out to me, and I'll be talking about, like, I'm keeping my Super 7s in their packaging, kind of a rarity for me. But we're going to talk about why that is and why I decided to open up O-rings, even though I have a ton of vintage O-rings here. So those are the things I want to get into. So I'm going to talk about 2 things that I think are awesome about, and have some criticism about the O-ring line. 2 things that are awesome, but also have criticism about in this Super 7 ReAction line. And why? I think they're both amazing. So spoilers for this journey right here. So let's get into it. So number 1, and what I really want to start this video off with and end it with, is really like the fact that, like, I love G.I. Joe. Since I was a kid, it's all I could really get my hands on. We weren't rich enough for Transformers, I had 1 or 2 here and there that the grandparents or someone else would have purchased for me, but my main bread and butter until Ninja Turtles came around, honestly, was G.I. Joe. Even up to this day, G.I. Joe, American hero, some of my favorites. So number 1, let's get into it. It is an awesome time to be a G.I. Joe fan, and it's just one of the coolest times ever. Like, the His Tank backed like crazy. I've got O-ring figures coming out. I have Super 7 ReAction figures coming out. There is so much neat G.I. Joe merchandise on secondary markets. I picked up a couple of cool enamel pins for my jackets. Really stuff that just pops for me. I got a Defiant patch at a toy show a couple of months ago. So I would say the fact that I have G.I. Joe that I'm just swimming through right now is freaking phenomenal. And I think as G.I. Joe fans and toy fans, honestly, we should be really happy about that. Like I said, I'm going to get into some critiques about this stuff in a few moments, but just the fact that I have G.I. Joes, and it's been such a long time since, and there have been some pretty fall on your face G.I. Joe fails. Sigma 7. Or is it Sigma 6? I didn't buy it. So that's my main thing here. Is I just want to shout out that I'm just so happy to have G.I. Joe, and even coming from all ends, to embrace that nerdity. I think that's something we should jump into this video, just going right off the bat. Part 2. I want to talk about O-ring first. When it was announced that O-rings were coming back, it was in a pretty big backlash to the modern stuff that had been just reissued 50th anniversary stuff. And that's really that stuff was cool and all, but I missed out on the boat. I wasn't collecting at that G.I. Joe at that point. So I wasn't happy to get that stuff. It was fine. But when they announced that after so many people were vocal about it, especially a lot of my friends in on G.I. Joe Trader PX and a couple of those other Facebook groups that are massive, that we want O-rings. And it's hell yeah, we want O-rings. I would so much rather have O-ring. If they're gonna just get reproduced, Like, I have a ton of vintage ones, and I'll show you some videos of that interlaced in here. I have so many of them, but so many of them are brittle. Plastic's falling apart. Even the stuff from the 90s, my 1990, like 1 or 92 Duke, like he had a sit-down rocket launcher. That and his guns, all that stuff has evaporated like a Thanos snap. It is gone. So it's nice to have new, hopefully sustainable plastic that sticks around for quite a while with these O-rings here. So that's some kind of cool stuff going along with that. I'm really happy that, like, you know, we're getting what back to the actual what G.I. Joe's all about. Whereas those, like, for me, my group generation, were those 3 3/4 ones. Now they've been trickling out, so we'll talk about that in a minute here. But I really want to say, like, the attention to detail, the paint jobs on the O-rings especially. When I put the Cobra Troopers on my the Stinger Jeep that came out, oh man, like, even with like the matte finish that I'm not a huge fan of, I like my G.I. Joe shiny. But with that matte finish, they actually look really good, and they're really awesome to just delineate from the G.I. Joes that have come before recently. So I think in retrospect, that was a really cool idea to put it in matte finish. Now I know some of the mid-aughts ones were matte finished as well. So I think it's a good way to distinguish from the original A Real American Hero line and what we have coming out right now. I also want to say the fact that, like, they're coming with transforming G.I. Joe vehicles that like Bumblebee and Megatron as a Hiss and an All-Striker. I just got those in. So cool. Like, this is like, yeah, like, it just feels like Hasbro was starting to think, like, man, like, again, shared universe, that kind of thing. I really hope we get, like, I don't know, they put Matt Tracker from Mask in the 25th anniversary line. I hope we get a little bit of that too. It's like, you know, Hasbro has all these resources. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing, like, some G.I. Joe, like, Star Wars crossover. You know, it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, if I get some of my O-ring Joes that can fit on, like jumping on a Millennium Falcon kind of vehicle or something like that. Yeah, a little fantastical, but, like, G.I. Joe's always been about that sci-fi for me. So really stoked about them teaming up, and the figures that have come out have been looking pretty dang phenomenal. That Bumblebee looks great. Megatron is awesome. Comes with a Baroness. Super happy to have her. I have a vintage Baroness, but, like, you know, I don't want to move her around because her elbows will crack. So that's one little thing there. So that's part 2. In part 3, talking about, like, really quick, Super7, the reaction figures, the most divisive part of the G.I. Joe relaunch, I think. And one of the things, you know, when I look at, like, the reaction figures, is that these, like, the packaging, the reason why I'm going to keep them in the packaging is that they are so, like, spot on to, not only that, spot on to that original G.I. Joe packaging with the white border around here, which the current G.I. Joes don't have, but, like, look, I got file cards, and they're file cards of not just, like, here's a bunch of stuff in French and Japanese, and you're like, cool, like, I'm glad everyone in the world can read about G.I. Joe, that's awesome, but, like, we're missing so much of that character context, and so many of us love collecting file cards, myself included. So that's a big, you know, bummer, and that's why I think the reactions really stand out. But they also went in and made it like a full-on nuanced piece of art by making new artwork over on the sides over here for these. I'm holding up the body massage figure. I might be like, body massage, which is a great joke and reference to, like, the early 2000s PSAs that people redid on the internet. Chef's kiss, right? But one thing I also want to talk about is I think the figures, even though they are not articulated, they're 5 points of articulation. Man, I think that they put so much more into the sculpt and the design of these figures than they have any other really reaction figures that I've seen. I think the quality has been phenomenal on those figures. And like I said, I'm keeping them in package, but I'm also getting them, like, you know, stuff I've never gotten from G.I. Joe. Like, the deep cuts are so good. And they're like, we have a regular line and we're putting out like stuff I've never seen, like the green shirts and like more Cobra Troopers of all different kind of like, and they're all like different colors. They're all different like nationalities, right? Like they're putting out female ones, which is like, oh, so cool. Like I can't wait to see if they do that with some Crimson Guards and make them unmasked. Like little things like that get me excited. But also their deep cuts are for like the Sunbow TV show, which I absolutely loved growing up as a kid. That's a big deal for me. Like the fact that they're constantly like saying like, hey, yes, we have the regular figures, but we're also going to go like with our convention exclusives. We're going to start deep cutting right at the beginning with the Pyramid of Darkness. And we're getting Joe's like bazooka in his winter outfit. We got the Arctic mission as well from like one of the earlier G.I. Joe movies. But like the snake train entrance for the Pyramid of Darkness set from San Diego this year, so good. So they're like really like on brand with getting like stuff that has never come out. And while that is like really amazing, it's also like supplemented by this line of stuff we know and love with some better sculpting that really fits the look and feel and style of the G.I. Joe television show. Like the O-ring Joes do not look a lot like those cartoons. They just don't. So many of them never showed up in cartoons. Like the second generation Deep Six with his crazy like teal outfit, right? Like I never saw him on a cartoon. Looked great. Or like all 17 versions of Duke, right? You only saw one in his little tan shirt. So there's not like that O-ring line again. I love it. The new O-ring line, again, I love that too. However, like I think Super 7 is doing something vastly different and really paying homage to that show and getting the sculpts down and the art and design of it too. Like, I'm going to talk about points of articulation and cost. Don't get me wrong here in my fifth point, but really what I want to talk about is just how much I adore these figures. And yes, they don't have bendy knees, they don't have bendy elbows, but like, they just look good. Like, and it looked good on a shelf. They look good on hanging on a wall. So that's one thing I really wanted to finish off with these Super 7 and give them some love. Let's talk about detractions a little bit. I'm going to start with the O-rings, and then I'm going to jump into Super 7. So, detractions. The O-ring line is scattered. We want to talk about, like, they're $20 a piece. Right? Like, why should I pay $20 for a carded O-ring figure? And that's because they're not going to mass market. So they are at just such a slow flow. And it took me forever to get, like, anything in. Like, I almost canceled my Duke and Cobra Commander order until I saw that they were coming with, like, G.I. Joe, the movie accessories that I haven't seen anywhere else. I'm like, oh, cool. All right, I'm definitely going to pick these up. But I was really excited when O-ring came back because they're like, not only did we get like the announcement of Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, but we got a freaking HasLab Sky Striker, which, is just like, I would say is overpriced. But all HasLabs, I think, in some way or form are overpriced. However, like, I'm happy to admit I'm part of the problem because I scooped that bad boy up in the first week. And I love all the accessories that are coming along with it. All the exclusive figures. Scarlet in that Ace uniform looks amazing. Bravo. However, I will say it's one of those things where it's like, dude, like, I want to keep collecting more O-rings. Because again, like, they're not going to be brittle like the ones I keep in the display. But, like, when are they coming out? They haven't announced anything new since that Transformers collab, which has been months and months and months. They're not, like, consistent. It's weird because, like, with the Duke and Cobra Commander set, when they came out, they're like, it's like they saw what Super 7 was doing with the cartoon deep cuts, and they're like, we're gonna take that idea, but run with it with O-ring and run with it with G.I. Joe the movie. And I'm like, cool. Like, are we getting Globulus next and Nemesis Enforcer and that in those Dayglow colors? Like, again, though, if you come back to Super 7, like, if I get a Super 7 Nemesis Enforcer, he's gonna be taller and he's gonna look just like Nemesis Enforcer from the cartoon. If I get Nemesis Enforcer from Hasbro, he's gonna just be a repaint of the O-ring mold. Totally fine. but we should know that's the criticism, right? Like, these figures are just as expensive, if not more, than Super7s are. They are very limited in the distribution and the announcements. So you're kind of always just like, all right, we announced this, what's going on? Like, so it feels like they're pivoting in midline. So they're like, yeah, let's do some day glow, like cool, like animation colors, because that's what Super7's doing as well. And we want to get in on that fun game. I won't say they're ripping off their ideas, but like, so that's really the biggest criticism of the O-rings. Like, people want to sit here and talk about the fact that, like, you know, Super7's not posable and that they're expensive. I was like, what about our new O-rings? I was like, bro, when I bought O-rings when I was younger, I was like, look, we're looking at like $1 or $2. 40 years later, we're looking at $20. And it's just like, and I have to give them in a 2-pack. Like, I can't buy singles. You know, they're just, you know, they're grouped up. They're grouped up well. Don't get me wrong. But it was like, was 2 Cobra officers like the best choice when I could have had, like, you know, the original 13? Like, if they would do the original 13 pack, that would be awesome. I would love that. And yeah, I said original 13. I know there's another one. So that's just something like with those O-rings, is like there's no consistency. And I think that's the major detriment of like the O-ring re-release. And what I would love to see more. So what I would love, like, let's offer some, as I offer constructive criticism, let's offer solutions. Because I hate watching those videos where people just bitch. Yeah, I said a bad word. Wow, cool. But here's my solutions. Let's get some consistency in the line. Let's be like, hey, let's pick a theme and run with it. You know? And if we're not starting to find out as well, transparency would be nice. Like, hey, what's coming out? Like, what are we doing with this? Hasbro's so, like, stick in the mud with saying anything to anyone ever that it's just like, all right, guys, like, you're driving me a little nuts here, and I love your stuff. But even me, the most patient man in the world, I'm getting a little frustrated that I'm not getting more of a collection going here. Toys are all about collecting. I think we're past the pandemic hump at this point, and I'm like, my credit card seems to think so, with all the Hasbro stuff. So hopefully we're getting a lot more coming in with O-Ring in 2023. That's my hope. Fingers crossed. Consistency and transparency would be my solutions. Be like, hey, like, pick a theme and let's run with it. If it doesn't work, let's address it and move on. Those are my 2 things for the O-rings. And let's get into Super7's detractors here. So with Super7, the thing is, like, I have no problems finding them. And they do have consistency in the line. Great. However, again, they're price high too. Like $20, $17.99 at Target. Like, and I know a lot of people are like, if it's not a GI Joe if it ain't articulated. Fine. So don't collect the line and pipe down. Like, that's all I've been hearing for the last year, instead of like, man, we're getting like all these cool deep cuts from the Pyramid of Darkness, from like the first couple of movies, like, you know, little things that really like pop me as a G.I. Joe fan for a long time are happening. And like, if O-Ring would catch up and do those as well, awesome. But like, at the same time, cost is just like, is really prohibitive for me to get both lines. I'll be honest. I pick and choose big time between what I'm going to get for Super7. And that's kind of the problem there, is it's like, they put out so much, and I'm just not able to get all of it. Like, there's no way I can collect all those green shirts, all those Cobra, like, little officers and grunts. Like, I just can't. So those are some things that I really feel like are a detriment to Super7. I think they're more of an art line, or more of a collector line in that aspect, less of a display line, like where you would like pose them into something. But like, again, I think it's worth it for the deep cut, worth it to like consider that that's what this is, and to move on from the like the price complaining for like the points of articulation. Like, they're never going to change the points of articulation for ReAction. They are going to make them amazingly well sculpted. So that's a thing. But at the same time, I think like, man, like, I know so many of us collectors that would go in on it if they were at $12.99. And Super7 is getting big enough, especially with Disney licenses, I'm imagining, to where they can start cutting some costs. And I would say, cut those costs on reactions. Keep your ultimates at your, whatever your $50 price point is. Get those ultimates out. That's another huge critique for me on the GIJOE line. That's not part of this video though. But like, it seems like we're getting more and more reaction figures. I was like, cut those prices. That's just, you know, I don't know the business logistics. I would love to see less, have to pay less, and not have to buy these on clearance, right? Like I bought a bunch of them on clearance from Target, and that was awesome. I was like, but I really worry about the line when I'm constantly buying things on clearance. And that's kind of what like Target and toys have been looking like for a while here now. So to bring that all together, tie it up, those are my main critiques. Are like, if they would put like a little more articulation into them, that would be cool. I don't need to have it, but that would be really cool. Maybe in the knees, you know, like they kind of still have those like Fisher Price people like waists, you know, with the big like dumpy crotch there. But it's fine. It's totally fine for me. I love them. They look amazing. But I do think there's things we can fix about them. So those are my thoughts on Super7, and all my 5 points together here. I want to bring it back around to the first point, is that really, like, I'm just happy to have GIJOE. I'm not content because I still have criticisms and there's things that I want to be fixed, but those criticisms don't detract from me having a great time with these figures and getting excited for announcements. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to sit here and just poo-poo on everything to get like a little, like, you know, to get like a bunch of people to like and comment and subscribe. That's not what I'm here for. Like, if you want criticism, my honest opinion, yes, but I'm also going to tell you what I like about them. And I see plenty of other channels not doing that, and it drives me nuts. So that's one of the reasons why I haven't done one of these in a while too, is trying to figure out what I want to say in these videos, and talk about the toys themselves. And I'm going on for a little bit longer of a ramble with these, but like, I'm comparing two toy lines, and I think they're worth the time. And it's GIJOE. GIJOE's back. We're getting the spirit of really good GIJOE. And I think everyone should enjoy it who's been a GIJOE fan. Dive in. Take a chance on a reaction. Just do it. Take a chance on an O-ring set. If you've never seen those before somehow, I don't know. Maybe you're just a classified collector. So that's what I have to say about GIJOE Super7. I would love to hear your thoughts and converse with you as well. I really want to get more information. Like I said, I'm just one guy with thoughts. I would like to hear other people's thoughts. So give me a comment down below. Talk to me about what you like, what you don't like. Give me some constructive criticism in those lines. Give me some solutions too, boys. And that's all I got for you. So I want to say, if you got to the end of this video, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I love you. That's amazing. This is awesome. I hope you like my Owen Hart shirt. He was the best. So I'm starting this channel back up again. It's been a pause, but I want to be more consistent. So if you'd like, comment, subscribe, all those good things, but really share this video with, you know, if you're in a GIJOE group, see someone talking about GIJOE on a Discord somewhere, share this video out. Let them know what it's all about. Let them know what I'm all about. And with that, again, thank you and goodbye.